King Vandia is a dragon an astonishing 5,000 years old who could very well be the most powerful of his kind. However, there's one small detail. He's a complete failure, foolish and cowardly. To make matters worse, to the shame of his race, he's a vegetarian and has the strength equivalent to that of a level 1 slime. The story begins in the capital of a kingdom facing a devastating threat. The Demon King has declared that he will destroy the city completely. The war is relentless, and the fear of losing everything consumes the inhabitants. With no options left, the city decides to seek help from a legendary figure, the great evil dragon who has lived in isolation on the outskirts for millennia. Although no one has ever seen him, stories and myths depict him as a creature of unmatched power. Desperate, the city's leaders make a bold decision: to beg for the dragon's help by offering a sacrifice. The king chooses an orphan named Riao as the ideal offering. Prepared for her mission, Riao is sent to the ancient forest where the dragon slumbers. Upon reaching the lair of the great evil dragon, Riao descends reverently, kneeling before him. She explains the suffering of her kingdom and begs for his help, offering herself as a sacrifice. However, to her surprise, the dragon reveals that he's an herbivore and does not consume human flesh. Far from the terrifying image painted by legends, he's timid and avoids battles, which is why he's lived reclusively for so long. Riao, in disbelief, insists on her offer, going as far as to ask the dragon to taste a piece of her body to see if she's worthy. The dragon, trying to convince her, shows his diet based on leaves and fruits, but Riao refuses to believe him, holding fast to the stories she's heard of his destruction. Persistent, she leaves the place, and the dragon, relieved, believes he's finally rid of her. However, shortly after, he hears Riao's voice again. She had lain down on a bed of leaves, offering herself once more as a sacrifice. At that moment, the dragon notices something special about her: a great magical aura, indicating that Riao has the potential to become a powerful sorceress if she survives that day's trial. He tries to persuade her to return home, warning that her family must be worried, but Riao reveals she's an orphan and explains that returning without success would mean her death, as she's seen as the kingdom's last hope. Desperate, she even offers her soul if her body isn't enough. When the dragon refuses again, she draws a sword, ready to take her own life so he can consume her soul. Distressed, the dragon fabricates a lie to save her. He claims that he has already consumed part of her soul, leaving only her body behind. Riao believes him and, in an act of gratitude, vows to become his apprentice. Even so, he tries to convince her to return home. Faced with her persistence, the dragon, for the first time in 5,000 years, leaves the forest to accompany her back to the city. Upon arriving in the city, he expects hostility, but is received with honor and reverence. To maintain the ruse, he tells the king that he accepted the sacrifice and that they need not send anyone else. He promises to consider the proposal of facing the Demon King, though he knows he's not capable of doing so and plans to flee to avoid the townsfolk. Before leaving, worried about Riao's future, he lies once more, telling the people that his decision to help them depends on Riao being the perfect sacrifice. In doing so, he ensures that she will be treated with respect. From that point on, Riao's life begins to change. But the prince, consumed by anger, plots something that threatens to complicate things even more. He accuses the dragon of consuming Riao's soul stones. He shouts, declaring he'd rather see the city destroyed by the Demon King than allow Riao to die, even offering his own soul in her place. Riao, now believing she is the dragon's apprentice and determined to protect him, warns the prince not to attack, threatening to deal with him personally if he does. As King Vandia prepares to leave the city, a new threat arises. A pack of wolves invades the area. The dragon tries to intimidate them with his imposing appearance, but full of fear, he realizes the wolves aren't frightened at all. Surrounded and with no escape, King Vandia begins to cry, certain there's no way to defeat them. To his surprise, Riao charges forward with her sword and, displaying extraordinary skill, defeats all the wolves in a single strike. Impressed, King Vandia acknowledges her immense talent, declaring that she has the potential to become one of the greatest sorceresses he has ever seen in his 5,000 years of life. Riao kneels before the dragon, renewing her vow as his apprentice. Upon their return to the city, the people fear King Vandia even more, believing he was the one who defeated the wolves. King Vandia realizes there's no way to explain the truth, but decides to speak with the prince, who had shown concern for Riao. When he tries to clarify the situation, The prince grows suspicious and accuses him of using Riao to avoid his responsibility to face the Demon King. The discussion grows heated, with the prince hurling harsh words at King Vandia. Furious at the insults toward the dragon, Riao threatens to kill the prince. King Vandia intervenes, reminding her that the prince is her friend. Riao denies it, claiming the prince always pushed her away from the palace. However, King Vandia discovers that the prince did so to protect her. He dressed her in new clothes and sent her away to keep her safe, even knowing he'd be punished by his father. Despite this, Riao insists the prince only wanted her gone because he was ambitious to become the dragon's apprentice himself. Determined, Riao storms into the prince's room and finds a dress he had kept for years, a symbol of his ongoing care. The prince promises to rescue her one day and hopes the dress will protect her. With preparations complete, Riao climbs onto King Vandia's back, determined to face the Demon King. During the flight, she develops an incredible ability called the Great Wing of the Evil Dragon, allowing her to reach astonishing heights. King Vandia, fearing for both their safety, convinces Riao to postpone the confrontation so they can train. They travel to Palais Donor City, where Riao shares information about the kingdom, but omits that the place is at war with zombie flies. When they arrive, King Vandia sees a bright light and believes it to be a prosperous village, but soon discovers it's a fire. Frustrated, he scolds Riao for hiding this information, but she dismisses it, saying such an insignificant war shouldn't concern a dragon. Upon arrival, the soldiers mistake King Vandia for the enemy and attack. Riao intervenes, defeating the monsters. The warriors recognize King Vandia as the great evil dragon, and their leader, Alina, welcomes him warmly. King Vandia decides to help the people, and while Riao goes off to fight the zombie flies, he speaks with Alina about the origin of the threat. He suggests the creatures are being controlled by someone in a tower and asks her to search for tall buildings to put an end to the problem. Riao returns triumphant, but insists on joining another battle. King Vandia, worried about her exhaustion, orders her to rest. As she falls into a deep sleep, he considers asking Alina to look after her as a gesture of gratitude, allowing him to return to the forest. While she sleeps, Riao has a disturbing dream of her father calling out to her in despair, while King Vandia silently watches, reflecting on his journey alongside her. The next day, King Vandia meets with Alina, and she thanks him for the advice that helped her locate and defeat the source of the zombies. Observing how King Vandia cares for Riao, Alina admits he's nothing like the rumors said. She confesses to having heard stories of him being a cruel dragon who reveled in drinking blood and devouring flesh, but now sees that he's protective and kind toward the human child. King Vandia, somewhat embarrassed, reveals that he's a vegan dragon, incapable of harming any creature, living peacefully in the forest. Alina, still skeptical, points out that the incredible feats performed in the city could only have come from his power. King Vandia insists that all the magic and strength come from Riao, claiming the girl isn't drawing anything from him and that the talent is entirely her own. Alina, however, doesn't believe him. She says that no human could possess such power and suggests that Riao might not be just an ordinary child, but perhaps a legendary sorceress described in ancient myths. However, Alina warns that such power could consume Riao, turning her into something monstrous, maybe even a dragon. King Vandia reacts in horror at the idea, but Alina tries to calm him, saying it's only a theory. Concerned for Riao's safety, King Vandia begs Alina to look after her and help her hone her abilities while he returns to the forest. Before giving an answer, Alina asks why King Vandia is going against the Demon King. King Vandia tries to explain that he doesn't care about the Demon King and that he lacks the power to face him. But Alina reveals that she is one of the Demon King's great swordmasters and was sent to kill him. She draws her sword and attacks King Vandia. Seeing this, Riao awakens and intervenes, using her magical abilities to protect the dragon. However, Alina is a skilled swordswoman and manages to defend herself, eventually wounding Riao, who collapses. Meanwhile, Alina turns her attention to King Vandia, pressing him to answer her questions about his intentions. King Vandia refuses to give a satisfying response, and Alina attacks again, this time using a magic sword that inflicts excruciating pain without leaving a single wound. King Vandia, overwhelmed by the unbearable pain, begs to be killed, but Alina stops when she realizes he's already too weak to go on. She advised him to keep his weakness a secret, warning that many bounty hunters would come after him since he carried the second highest bounty in the world. Finally, she suggested that King Vandia tell Riao that everything that happened was just a dream before leaving. When Riao woke up, she was relieved to be by King Vandia's side again. However, she noticed something different. The dragon was now much smaller, almost like a lizard. Remembering Alina's advice, King Vandia came up with an explanation, saying that he had decided to shrink his body to preserve his strength and avoid drawing attention. As they prepared to leave the city, Riao remained uneasy, believing she had seen Alina attack King Vandia the night before. King Vandia tried to convince her that it had all been a dream, and emphasized that Alina was a kind person who had helped them, even providing Riao with a new weapon and tending to her clothes. Meanwhile, in the village, the citizens were working to repair the damage from the attack. Suddenly, Prince Riot arrived, declaring that he had come to kill King Vandia and save Riao. The villagers initially thought he was there to help with reconstruction, but soon realized his true intentions. When he was nearly crushed by a collapsing wall, Alina saved him and scolded him for his weakness, saying he couldn't save anyone, not even himself. Determined, Riot begged Alina to train him, and though reluctant, she accepted. The training proved exhausting, and Riot could barely keep up, but he refused to give up. Meanwhile, in the forest, King Vandia, now shrunken and starving, spotted a rabbit nibbling on leaves. He wished to find something to eat, but feared his current limitations would make survival even harder. Mistakenly believing that King Vandia wanted to devour the rabbit, Riao begged him not to harm the innocent creature, reminding him that he was an herbivore. Riao struggled to accept that her hero couldn't eat human flesh, and not wanting to disappoint her, he decided to stay hungry. Suddenly, they were attacked by human traffickers. These criminals underestimated King Vandia, thinking he was merely a lizard, and planned to kill him for a bounty and sell Riao. Though Riao was eager to fight back, King Vandia initially urged her to restrain herself. However, the traffickers' taunts became unbearable for him, and he finally allowed Riao to fight. With a flick of her finger, Riao sent one of the traffickers flying through the air. Realizing their mistake, the men quickly apologized. King Vandia then asked where the slaves were being held, and the men led them to the location. Upon arrival, he freed all the captives and instructed Riao to escort them to the nearest city. Reluctant to leave her master, Riao refused, but eventually agreed when he explained that the task was part of her training. In her absence, King Vandia planned to find food for himself, wandering through the forest in search of edible leaves. He ended up falling into a trap. A hungry creature lurking inside a cave had been waiting for prey. As the monster prepared to devour him, King Vandia cried out Riao's name. The being approached him, but King Vandia tried to flee. The creature warned him to stop running, saying there were traps nearby. Even so, King Vandia triggered one and was nearly struck by a barrage of arrows. The creature caught up to him and explained that it only wanted to warn him about the dangers. Then, it handed him an apple and other fruits, telling him to eat. Relieved, King Vandia admitted he had mistaken the being for a malevolent monster, but realized it was actually quite kind. The being then revealed that it could sense a strong and dangerous presence on the surface. King Vandia deduced that it must be Riao, explaining that despite her strength, she was only human and very kind-hearted. King Vandia mentioned the bandits, but the being replied that no one came by anymore since there were no treasures left. Then it began to cry, saying it wanted to leave but couldn't. When King Vandia asked why, the being pointed to a mural on the wall. The image revealed that it was the god of the hunt of those lands and that, long ago, it had descended to teach people its skills. Once they mastered them, the people forgot about the god, leaving it behind. It could only leave if it were training someone, but since then it had been trapped there. Feeling pity, King Vandia offered to become its pupil, which made the god of the hunt very happy. He warned that he was terrible at learning new things, but the god assured him that there were no bad students, only bad teachers. Determined, the god grabbed his whip and promised to turn him into the greatest hunter of all time in just 3 hours. The training began with physical exercises. The god ordered 200 sit-ups, but as soon as King Vandia lay down, he rolled to the side because of his scales. He explained that he couldn't lie down like humans, which frustrated the god, as his methods had never failed with humans in thousands of years. King Vandia insisted that he was a dragon, not a human, and ended up failing the lesson. In the next lesson, the god tried to teach him balance by making him cross a wooden bridge. King Vandia warned that the bridge wouldn't support his weight, but the god insisted. As expected, the bridge broke and King Vandia fell. Irritated, the god rebuilt the bridge with his powers only to repeat the training and watch the dragon fail again. Next came lessons in archery, push-ups, traps, and rabbit chasing. But King Vandia failed every single one. The funniest moment was when the rabbit he was supposed to catch attacked him instead. Finally, the god put him through an obstacle course rigged with dynamite that would explode if he made a mistake. When the potion keeping King Vandia in his human-sized form wore off, he returned to his original size and was sent flying through the air. That night, the god of the hunt, frustrated, began to doubt his own skills as a teacher. He then decided to grant King Vandia part of his power, allowing him to extend his claws. He declared that King Vandia had passed the training and quickly retreated back into his cave, asking the dragon never to tell anyone what had happened. King Vandia promised he wouldn't ruin his career as a teacher and decided to wait for Riao's return until sunrise. The next morning, Riao greeted him cheerfully, announcing that she had successfully completed her mission. She had also gathered information about a nearby city called Fin, which seemed to be protected only by a water channel. She suggested that it would be a waste to let the city be destroyed by the Demon Lord's army and proposed that they take control of it. With that, Riao decided their fate and led King Vandia toward Fin, even against his will. During the journey, they finally emerged from the forest and caught a panoramic view of the city. King Vandia drank a bit of the potion he had brought from Paliudonor City to shrink himself once again. As they left the forest, he admired the beauty of the landscape until Riao showed him a piece of paper, suggesting they send a declaration of dominion from the evil dragon over the city. King Vandia immediately rejected the idea and reminded Riao that they shouldn't provoke unnecessary conflicts with humans, as he wanted to form an alliance with them to fight the Demon Lord. They continued walking toward the city, and King Vandia argued that it was impossible for such a large place to have no defenses. Using her special eye magic, Riao confirmed that the city was protected by a magical barrier that prevented outsiders from entering without permission. She explained that the barrier had been created by a guardian known as the Saint of Waters. King Vandia praised Riao for finally avoiding useless information, but suddenly heard a woman's voice saying that the evil dragon was not welcome in Fin and should leave immediately. Riao tried to explain that he wasn't an evil dragon, but the woman didn't believe her, saying he couldn't fool her with the appearance of a small pet dragon while allowing his disciple to use dark magic. Even as they tried to argue, the Saint of Waters' voice suddenly vanished, and the barrier around the city fell. King Vandia looked at Riao and realized she had used part of her magic to scare the Saint of Waters, leaving him even more worried about what was to come. They continued walking into the city, noticing the suspicious gazes of its inhabitants. King Vandia asked Riao to pretend to be a circus tamer, and he, her talking pet dragon. The townspeople, relieved, assumed they must have come for the city's festival, especially since the Saint of Waters had allowed them through. With that, they returned to their routines, and one of the locals offered to show them around and help them find decent lodging. During the tour, he told the story of how the city, once an arid desert, was transformed by the Saint of Waters, who used her powers to shape the land and water, creating rivers and the infrastructure that sustained life there. After settling in, King Vandia decided he needed to clear things up with the Saint of Waters and told Riao about his plan to find the Guardian. He instructed Riao to stay at the inn while he explored the city, trying to discover the Saint of Waters' whereabouts. Despite his efforts, he couldn't find her anywhere. Exhausted and thirsty, he decided to stop by a tavern for a glass of water. But to his surprise, the Saint of Waters was hiding inside the very cup he was about to drink from. Terrified by the presence of the evil dragon, she bolted out and hid in a nearby tank. However, King Vandia somehow ended up falling in there too. He seemed to avoid the river water, as he had heard rumors that the Saint of Waters had cast a spell on it, poisoning any enemy who approached, such as demons and monsters. The saint kept running away, but King Vandia, having no other choice, decided to drink from the river. As he sat by the water's edge, his stomach growled. A group of children approached and offered him an apple, which he gladly accepted. Suddenly, the Saint of Waters emerged from the river in her human form, declaring that she would not allow him to eat the children. King Vandia tried to explain that he had no evil intentions, but she sent the children away and insisted that he wouldn't harm anyone from her city. He replied that he only wished to return to the inn and have a peaceful meal. Distrustful, the saint asked if he was telling the truth. He explained that he was merely trying to find the city's guardian, to clear up misunderstandings, and asked that the barrier be restored. The saint claimed he must be mistaken, as she was just an ordinary girl, but assured him that the true guardian would certainly restore the barrier. Pretending to be a commoner, she escorted him back to the inn and then ran off, making it clear she didn't wish to stay in contact. Upon entering the inn, King Vandia found Riao engaged in a wisdom training session with Reen. When he asked what she was doing, Riao replied that she was practicing stillness, just as he had instructed. King Vandia clarified that he hadn't meant anything that deep and suggested she take the next day off to play with the city's children and learn more about human customs. Riao protested, saying she didn't trust humans, who worshipped a demon disguised as a saint, but King Vandia reassured her, saying the Saint of Waters must be a good person. Meanwhile, the Demon Lord's right hand, a great white dragon, flew over Finn with his shadowy partner, observing the city's barrier. The dragon noted that it was visibly weaker and that his subordinates had failed to capture it. Determined to destroy the city, he planned an attack for the following morning. The next morning, the Saint of Waters appeared disguised as a waitress, bringing breakfast to King Vandia and Riao. Riao immediately humiliated her by slamming her face to the ground, which caused water to splash everywhere and the saint to shrink in size. Pretending to be just an ordinary waitress, the saint brought a pile of rotten vegetables she had gathered from the trash, trying to provoke the dragon. Furious, Riao hit her again before the saint turned into water and fled once more. King Vandia scolded Riao, telling her she should use her powers only for good and in self-defense, giving her a lesson about kindness and empathy. He praised Riao, saying he was proud of her as his apprentice and encouraged her to play with the children as part of her mission for the day. As King Vandia tried to track the saint again, he stepped on a puddle that pulled him into a deep body of water. He discovered that the Saint of Waters was trying to drown him along with her. Meanwhile, Riao, sensing King Vandia's energy fading, hesitated to return, but soon encountered some human children. Determined, she interacted with them, asking about the small dragon they mentioned, concluding that there might be tiny dragons who played with humans. At that moment, the great white dragon from the Demon Lord's army invaded the city, declaring that the humans should prepare for his master's wrath. But Riao, innocently, thought he was the little dragon the children were looking for and invited him to play. The dragon, confused by the girl's attitude, didn't know how to react. He decided to accept her challenge and declared that he couldn't ignore such behavior. As a general of the Demon Lord's army, he announced that he would fight her with all seriousness and make her an example for anyone daring to defy the Demon Lord's forces. However, Riao completely ignored his monologue, cut him off, and lifted him effortlessly with one hand. She then asked the dragon if he wanted to play bounce the ball, and threw him, hoping he would bounce. However, he only crashed awkwardly and painfully, which made him furious. Enraged, he decided to destroy the city with a final devastating attack and flew up into the sky to charge it. Riao, however, flew after him and asked if he wanted to play on higher ground. Then she grabbed him by the tail, spun around like Goku, and hurled him back down to the ground. Once again, he didn't bounce as she expected, leaving her visibly disappointed. Riao then decided to finish him off, all in the name of her bounce the ball game with the white dragon. Meanwhile, the shadow demon who had come with him manifested as a demonic grasshopper and declared that he would have to take control of the city himself. Elsewhere, King Vandia was battling the Saint of Waters, who tried to drown him inside a water bubble. However, Riao's waves of energy caused the saint to lose control, and the two fell together into a vast aquatic space. As they fell, King Vandia began to pray, but a shadow appeared from his claw and transformed into a small boat for him. The Saint of Waters accused him of cheating and tried to drown him with a massive wave, but his boat turned into a balloon that lifted him into the air. At that moment, King Vandia carefully observed the Saint of Waters and confirmed what Riao had said about her. He realized that she was, in fact, a demon from the Demon Lord's army. The saint confirmed it and explained that she only wanted to save the city and its people, even as a demon. She ordered him to stop bothering her and cast a supreme spell that consumed all the water in Finn to create a seal around the evil dragon. The spell began draining his magical energy while suffocating him, and King Vandia wondered how he would escape. Suddenly, the mist on his claw transformed into the god of the hunt, the one who had saved him before. King Vandia asked for help again, but the god explained that he only helped his disciples twice and tried to teach him how to use that power himself. However, the Saint of Waters' magic weakened the connection, and King Vandia couldn't hear the important parts of the explanation. As the spell continued draining his strength, he accidentally absorbed the magical effects of a potion, transforming back into his original form. The unexpected transformation shattered the water seal and sent both of them bursting out of a fountain in the center of the city. The Saint of Waters began to cry, lamenting her failure to protect the city. She offered to return to the Demon Lord's army if King Vandia would spare the city's inhabitants. However, he explained that he had no intention of harming anyone. King Vandia clarified that he was just a vegetarian lizard, not the evil dragon she thought he was. He encouraged her to remain the city's saint, telling her she had brought life and hope to the people. He also asked her not to use that spell again, since the people of Finn depended on her. Moved, the saint smiled, and the two became friends. Before leaving, King Vandia asked her not to call him a lizard in front of Riao, as it would make her angry. However, he noticed a demonic grasshopper on the saint's head and wondered how such a low-level demon had managed to pass through the city's barrier. Suddenly, a dark aura surrounded the saint, and the water around them began to stir violently. The shadow demon took control of the Saint of Waters, whispering evil thoughts into her mind and reminding her of all the hardships she had endured. He convinced her that she was a water demon destined to destroy humanity. Under the demon's influence, the saint combined her powers of earth and water, filling the area around her with mud instead of water. She declared that she would drown the people of Finn, turning them into nourishment to reclaim her glory as a demon. She created a tsunami of mud and sent it toward the city, but to her surprise, instead of panicking, the citizens began to celebrate and thank the Saint of Waters for bringing them fertile mud. The saint formed a massive ball of mud and prepared to finish everyone off once and for all. However, King Vandia called out to Riao, who immediately sliced through the ball of mud in the blink of an eye and appeared before him. He asked what she had been doing and whether she had behaved herself. Riao casually explained that she had been playing with the human children, who suggested a game for her to find a little dragon. She found the white lizard and had been playing with him, until she decided to cut off the creature's head to present it to the children as proof of her victory. But as soon as she heard King Vandia's voice, she dropped everything and came running. King Vandia couldn't help but wonder what the story's creators had been thinking when they made Riao, but deep down, he felt relieved that she had at least saved the city from becoming a muddy wasteland. He then looked around for the Saint of Waters and found her sitting on a pile of mud, crying in despair. He approached her and said he was willing to listen, assuring her that it might ease her burden. The saint accepted his offer and began to tell her story. Centuries ago, when she joined the Demon Lord's army as a new recruit, she sought guidance from her superiors, but was rejected and called weak because of her appearance. So, she began to wander alone until she found a group of people crossing the desert. She decided to appear before them in her adult form and prepared to drown them, but instead of running away, they began thanking her for the water she brought. Irritated, she tried to attack with mud, but that only made the group happier, since they had found fertile soil. They began to revere her as a saint and asked for permission to live on the land she had blessed. As the years passed, that group built the city of Finn. The saint said she enjoyed being praised by people instead of despised, and decided to protect the city rather than destroy it. However, she confessed that she felt like a failure as a demon, and that this guilt had been weighing on her soul. Riao, in a teasing tone, said she should just accept defeat and hand the city over to the great evil dragon. But King Vandia interrupted her, saying the saint was a good person and encouraged her to make a choice, to remain a servant of the demon army or continue being the Saint of Waters for the people of Finn. At that moment, a little girl from the city approached the saint and invited her to join the celebration, saying she had heard that the Saint of Waters had blessed the city with fertile soil. Even after the child left, the saint began crying even harder, saying that the fact that they believed she was helping them only reminded her of how great her failure truly was. With a compassionate look, King Vandia gently patted her head and asked, "Would you rather be a demon who brings destruction, or the Saint of Waters who helps the people of Finn?" As she tried to calm down, the shadow demon inside her began thinking that she was useless and decided that King Vandia must be the strongest being there, since his disciple was incredibly powerful. He then abandoned the saint and entered King Vandia's mind. The demon began to probe his mind, trying to find some evil memory to use as a weapon. But King Vandia only felt overwhelmed and remarked that he must be really tired to be hallucinating in broad daylight. At that moment, Riao approached and said she finally understood why the evil dragon didn't want to rule the city. He left it to play with human children because that was a far less frustrating task. Riao added that the evil dragon would never want to rule over such foolish people who worshipped a failed demon as their saint. She suggested that they leave the city, and King Vandia agreed, though reluctantly, feeling it would be best not to cause any more trouble for the saint and the people of Finn. Just as they were about to depart, the saint called out to them and asked them to stop. She explained that she had promised the townsfolk she would never make them cry again, and mentioned that everyone was eagerly awaiting the Val Festival, which would take place in 3 days. She asked them to stay and enjoy the delicious food that would be served. King Vandia agreed, saying they wouldn't disappoint the children. He tried to come up with an excuse to explain his decision to Riao, but she simply replied that the great evil dragon didn't need to justify his plans to her. Meanwhile, the shadow demon continued wandering through King Vandia's mind, searching for a dark memory to use against him. At the same time, a scout from the Adventurers Guild arrived in Finn and began asking people about any recent anomalies. An elderly man replied that he must have come to the wrong city, since Finn was practically the symbol of peace. The repairs being made on the streets, another man explained, were the result of a performance by a dragon who had accompanied an entertainer during a show. The dragon ended up crashing into some public buildings, which was why they were being fixed. The explorer asked the man about this dragon and where he could find him. The man pointed outside the city and mentioned that the great white dragon had been wandering around there since the previous day. He described the dragon as suffering from trauma, struggling internally with his identity, torn between being a great general of the Demon Lord's army and the obedient, submissive pet Riao had turned him into. The explorer grew concerned and said he needed to report the case to the guild. Later that night, people gathered around a bulletin board in the city of Pona, while Alina continued training Riot as if he were a child slave. She forced him to drag a massive boulder through the city. Upon reading about the appearance of a great dragon in Finn, Alina became intrigued and wondered if King Vandia had revealed his true identity. She said he couldn't possibly be the evil dragon and decided to investigate personally. Before leaving, she ordered Riot to continue his training while she made preparations. Meanwhile, King Vandia and Riao strolled through the city during the festival. King Vandia tried to sneak away to eat secretly in the area where the sheep were kept. He tried to grab something for himself but was comically defeated by the sheep. At that moment, a child approached him with a handful of feed and offered it kindly. He thanked her and began stuffing his mouth with grass. However, Riao appeared and King Vandia panicked, imagining she would realize he wasn't truly the great evil dragon, which would shatter the illusion she had of him. To throw her off, he tried to act like a sheep, letting out a "bah." Riao watched and, instead of suspecting anything, lightly tapped her own head, saying she must be too tired if she was confusing a sheep with the great evil dragon. She added that this was why the great dragon always told her to rest well before continuing their journey. Moments later, the sheep surrounded King Vandia and stole all his grass. Just then, the shadow demon found a dark thought in his mind, a memory of the day he picked all the ripe apples from a tree for himself, leaving none for the other animals. That thought transformed him into his evil form. Consumed by new rage, King Vandia decided to fight the sheep for the grass, but was once again defeated. That brought him back to his senses, and he wondered why he had been so angry. The little girl invited him to come along to find the great dragon outside the city, suggesting they could graze together in the fields. King Vandia was confused, not knowing of any great dragon other than himself, but agreed to go with her. The next morning, King Vandia saw the great white dragon and asked the girl if that was the same one Riao had been playing with. She confirmed, and King Vandia grew curious, trying to understand what had happened. He approached to introduce himself and said that if Riao had caused trouble, he would bring her to apologize. However, the dragon seemed deeply traumatized, and, upon hearing Riao's name, begged King Vandia to play with him like a puppy. It was then that the shadow demon seized the opportunity to possess him, driving him mad and unleashing his full power. The great white dragon lost control and attacked King Vandia for real. He screamed desperately, calling out to Riao for help. In less than 3 seconds, Riao appeared from somewhere in the city and easily knocked the dragon out. The shadow demon realized that Riao was the strongest being in the city and decided to try possessing her instead. During the battle, it tried to make physical contact with her to switch bodies. After a fierce fight, it managed to enter her mind and began its evil speech to dominate her. However, Riao revealed that she carried within her an even greater darkness, one that consumed the shadow demon, leaving it bewildered as to how someone so powerful could follow such a useless dragon like King Vandia. As it was devoured, the shadow demon relived Riao's tragic past, the moment she lost her parents during a sea storm as monsters attacked the ship they were on. Outside, King Vandia approached Riao and suggested they apologize to the great white dragon for the violence. But suddenly, Riao screamed and released a massive burst of energy, creating a huge crater around her. She began to transform into an uncontrollable, demonic dragon. At that moment, Alina arrived in the city of Finn and declared that this was exactly what she had feared. She saved the Saint of Waters and King Vandia, both paralyzed with fear, and shielded the townspeople from being reduced to dust. Alina explained that Riao possessed an immense amount of magical power for her size, and that she kept it sealed because of her kind nature. However, if the seal were to break, she would become an irrational monster that destroyed everything. At that moment, Riao accused the Saint of Waters of disrespecting the great evil dragon and declared that she would pay for it with her life. In danger, King Vandia confirmed that this was exactly the kind of thing Riao would say, which terrified the saint even more, to the point that she literally turned into a puddle of water. Meanwhile, Alina prepared to face Riao with her sword. King Vandia thought everyone was safe because Alina was strong, but then he suddenly shouted for everyone to run and bolted too, saying there was no way she could face a monster like Riao alone. Alina remarked that there had to be something they could do and asked why it even mattered to King Vandia, since he had always wanted to get rid of Riao anyway. She said this was the perfect chance for him to do just that. King Vandia hesitated for a moment, but instead turned to face Riao. He recalled all the memories they had shared and decided to bring her back to her senses. For the first time in his life, he gathered his courage and ran toward her, even as she hurled a massive energy sphere in his direction. King Vandia tried to dodge the blast but was thrown far away. A few seconds later, he opened his eyes and heard Alina calling out, saying she might have a plan thanks to him. Grateful, King Vandia remarked how nice it was to have someone so reliable around. However, Alina immediately grabbed him by the tail and used him as both a shield and a bat to deflect the energy spheres that Riao kept firing. Alina explained that although Riao had lost her sanity, she was still the great evil dragon, who should never be offended, which made all her attacks completely harmless to him. King Vandia, though glad to hear that, complained that he couldn't be used as a shield and that they still needed to bring Riao back to her senses. The commander of the knights then proposed a new plan. If King Vandia made direct physical contact with Riao, she might regain her consciousness. Without warning, Alina grabbed King Vandia by the tail and threw him straight into Riao's attack. However, because of his small size, King Vandia was blown away by the sheer force of Riao's breath, carried by the wind. Alina remarked that there might be no choice but to sacrifice the Saint of Waters and flee. That made the saint go into dramatic mode, vehemently refusing the plan. At that moment, Riao began to fully transform into a demon dragon, making the situation even more chaotic. Alina warned that if it continued, the transformation would become permanent, which only made King Vandia more anxious. Determined, King Vandia said he had a plan. He asked Alina to hold Riao down while he got ready. Then, he requested the Saint of Waters to absorb the magic of the potion within his body so he could return to his original size. Meanwhile, Riao charged forward and clashed with Alina in an epic battle. The Swordmaster managed to hold her off for a while, but eventually reached her limit. Riao then gathered an immense sphere of pure energy and hurled it toward her. At that moment, King Vandia used the shadows in his claws, a gift from the god of the hunt, along with the white dragon's wings, to launch himself like a slingshot. He pierced through Riao's attack and finally managed to knock her down. Afterward, we see Riao recalling the events that followed the storm and how she ended up on the shore. People had treated them as monsters because of their powers, but her father told her he believed in her. He said that despite the hardships, she would overcome them because she was his daughter. Back in the real world, Riao regained consciousness and awoke in King Vandia's claws. She said things got pretty heated this time and agreed to go with King Vandia to apologize to everyone. As she looked around at the destruction, she nodded and stood up to meet with the Saint of Waters and Alina. The saint informed them that the city hadn't been damaged and that the festival would still take place. Alina agreed as well, saying she wouldn't be able to return to her city before nightfall anyway. And so, everyone decided to celebrate together. Thus ends the first season of A Kind Dragon of 5,000 Years, who was unjustly recognized as an evil dragon.